So guys, we have just arrived at the beautiful, amazing Mantis Founders Lodge. Now, if you are in search of wild places, beautiful spaces, this is the place to come to. And I'm so excited to be here because not only is this the final episode of the season and we're ending it off absolutely beautifully, but we're also going to be chatting to Craig Hinds from the band Watershed about life, touring, music. They've just launched their new album and super excited. We are going to talk to the absolute founder, the grandfather of conservation in the Eastern Cape, Mr. Adrian Gardner. So come with us, let's explore this beautiful place and let's see what there is to see.
Well, good morning, Sharon. Thank you so much for showing interest in what we do, because obviously we need people like yourself to tell the story. You know, the story, if it's not told, obviously doesn't get out there. And just to begin, I must tell you that there's an incredibly interesting thing that happens on Sky News every night at 7:30. It's climate change. And it's only for 15 minutes and it's for 5 days a week. And you know, I don't think I've missed an episode for the last, when it started, about 2.5 months ago. And it's an incredible story of just how we are abusing this planet, you know, and if we don't do something about it, maybe I'm going to be okay, you know, because I'm in the last lap of my life. But, you know, obviously think of the kids, the grandkids and everything else that's happening and then the way forward. And, you know, it's no good just talking about it. We've got to do something about it. But anyway, just to give you a history of how I got into this game and my love of conservation and wildlife is that I was born in Zambia and I moved from there to Zimbabwe in 1947. I was born in 1943, and then I grew up there. And I grew up. My dad was very involved in cattle farming, and the company was a British company that owned the biggest cattle ranching businesses in Zimbabwe. And just to give you an idea, one of the farms was 365,000 acres, 150,000 hectares, and in that farm was its own little game reserve. So as he was used to look after the farms when the managers went on leave, and we were exposed to that. So in my very early days, there was an exposure to wildlife and wild animals and nature. And then I went to a school which my father and his friends started. It was an old gold mine called Falcon College, and they turned that into a school. And I was one of the first there. And again, that was a whole experience on its own in terms of, you know, where we had to do all the fields and plant them, grow them, and it was a growing up in an environment where you had to really be on your own and get taught. But I think that also helped create some of the entrepreneurial skills or flair that I have. And then from there I went to Cape Town University in 1962 to do a Bachelor of Commerce degree, and I soon realized that there was another side of life besides just, you know, being in the bush at school and passing to matric. And there was a thing called wine, woman and song. So when I got there is that, you know, my priorities changed a bit. And in fact, I took 7 years to do a 3-year degree. But what I must tell you is that it's not quite as bad as that, because after 4 years, I decided to go and work. And then I started working, and then I realized that I'd let an academic qualification beat me. So then I went back at night to finish it. So the 3 years were at night, and I just realized I didn't want to get beaten by that. So while everybody else was enjoying the wild woman and song, I was back at school learning and getting my degree. And my first job was a spa. In those days, it was very early days of spa. And, you know, there was no such thing as a calculator or anything else. So I was an assistant in the accounts department. If I made a mistake, they would make me add the telephone book. So that's how I learned quite quickly. When I sit with our accountants and they put numbers up, I can tell them the answer a lot quicker than they can on their computers. But it was a great experience. And anyway, the reason for telling you that is because in those days, and they still had distribution centres, and there was a distribution centre for Spa in Port Elizabeth. And what happens, I got targeted when I was at Spa by the marketing lecturer at the university, who said to her husband, who was the general manager of Golden Arrow Bus Company, and he was looking for an assistant, and she said to him, take Adrian Gardner, I think he would be good. So anyway, I went and worked for this big corporation, and it lasted about 6 months, because it was just obviously not my kind of thing that I wanted to do. And then I left and I went and joined the distribution wholesaler in Port Elizabeth, at that stage called Stefrak and owned by Bruce McWilliams. And we opened branches all over South Africa. We went to Bethlehem, to Kimberley, to George, to Cape Town, and we set all those up. And then it wasn't long after we got all these going, we were targeted by Metro Cash and Carry, who bought us out. And I said to him, I would like to leave with that as well. So my payout then was 10,000 Rand in 1974. I went on my own, and I bought 50% of Penguin Pools. That was a franchise to build swimming pools. And anyway, it went exceptionally well, and in the end we owned every pool franchise in Port Elizabeth. But in the winter months of construction of pools, there was no demand, so I started building tennis courts, and then from tennis courts we started building roads, and we built highways in Transkei and Lesotho. And we then started a crane hire business, the first crane hire business in Port Elizabeth, and a transport business. And then in 1979, the economy of the world changed quite dramatically, and there was a big default of somebody who owed me quite a lot of money, and I lost everything, and everything collapsed in 1979. But the one thing I learned is that if you sign your surety and you shake somebody's hand, it's better than a contract. So what I did was then I paid off everybody that I'd signed surety for, so I was never personally sequestrated. And we started again in 1979. And it was quite lucky that I started again in swimming pools, and we built up our business quite quickly again, managed to buy in the crane hire business. And in those days you could make money in one business and you could offset it in another business, and particularly in what we'd call farming. So my partner in the crane business had a tremendous affection for horses, but rather for going to the races. I said to him I would rather breed horses. So we went and created a stud farm in Plettenberg Bay called Ruderfontein. And it was an amazing experience, that, because not only did we breed horses there, we raced horses, and in 1 year we had 8 Group 1 winners. We had Horse of the Year, Filly of the Year, and Sprinter of the Year. And I don't think it's been done again. But fortunately, a great friend who became a great friend in the racing business was Graham Beck. And I was walking on the beach in Muizenberg with him one day, and he said to me, "Don't put it back. It'll never happen again." And then just out of the blue, what happened is that somebody came along. I was actually in Harare, because we were then responsible for all the minerals that were going out of then Zimbabwe, or then Rhodesia, came through Port Elizabeth. So we handled the shipping of that, because from the crane business, we had a shipping business. And I got a call while I was there to say somebody's very interested in buying your farm. And he was a very interesting character. He was a guy by the name of Vito Palazzolo, who had a fair reputation. And anyway, and I said, "It's not for sale." So the lawyer in Plettenberg Bay said, "Everything is." So I went down on the Friday, and we'd sold it by Sunday. But I was left with 300 horses. He didn't want any of the horses, he just wanted the land and the stables. Anyway, so the horses we put into a public company, which Sydney Press had started, and I got ordinary shares, cash, and preference shares. And in the end, we actually sold that up, and it became a cash shell. But the purpose of that, and telling you that story, is because then I had some money again, and that was the mid-'80s. And so I then thought to myself, now, I really want my piece of Africa, going back to my Zimbabwe days. And so I went actually back to Zimbabwe to see if there was something there. I was looking for a game farm. Then I went to the traditional areas of South Africa. That's obviously near the Kruger, the northern Transvaal as it was then. And then I thought to myself, if I don't do it close to where I live, it's not going to work. And quite luckily or fortuitously, I was at a cricket match. We were very involved in sport, in rugby and cricket. And a friend of mine there said, there's a small farm outside Port Elizabeth, 1,200 hectares, which is for sale, and it's owned by some doctors in Johannesburg, and there's a hunting farm, and next to a little village called Allisdale. So I went out and looked at it and thought, I was actually quite surprised because I'd lived in Port Elizabeth then for 20 odd years and didn't realize just how beautiful the land is out here. And so anyway, we bought the farm, 1,200 hectares, and then the farm next door came up, which was made the total into about 4,000 hectares. And we were going through a drought similar to what we're going through today. They just had 7 years of drought. So more and more farms came up, and before I knew what had happened, I had 11,000 hectares. So I thought to myself, I need to commercialize this. So I need to go and find out, first of all, what game was here? What can I put back here? And there was fortunately an incredible journal done by a guy called Skeed, who documented all the animals that existed here. And in fact, if you look at that documentation and the carrying capacity, this would have been a better area for the Kruger than up there because we could carry more variety and more animals. So anyway, I looked at that very carefully, and then I think I'm a fair plagiarist, is that I like to see who's done it before me and copy it, but obviously do it differently or a little bit better. So I went and looked at all the private game reserves that were then operating in South Africa, and there weren't that many, and I came back and said, right, we're going to put back what was here, and we're going to rewild this part of South Africa. And I must tell you, it was tough because that was, 89, 90, and you know what South Africa was going through at that stage. Our Nelson Mandela had just come out of jail and all the rest of it. So we launched something in the middle of quite an interesting part of our history. And we opened Shamwari in 1992 with a Victorian house, Edwardian house, in fact, that we converted to be the first lodge called Longley Manor. And then it was a case of rewilding, because obviously we opened quite early on. We'd have the species. I mean, some of the translocation of the elephants were a story on its own. When we brought the lions here, we brought them from up north, and the plane went wrong, and we had to land it and change them into another plane, and they didn't have enough of the medicine to keep them asleep, and we just got them here in time. I landed them in Grahamstown. So it was really pioneering days in those days, how to do the fences for elephant and lion coming back. And, I think that, but what changed my life completely was, I've learned a lot about developing a product. You need endorsement, just like the Eastern Cape needs endorsement, and I think that's why you're here today, is to find out and to really promote the Eastern Cape as a tourism destination. So you need a story and you need endorsement. So anyway, the work that I was doing, I needed to be endorsed. So I soon worked out who would be the best endorsement for me would be Dr. Ian Player. Because, as we know, he saved the rhino, and we know that what a sort of a reputation he had. And anyway, I went to a talk because they had a thing called the Terra Nova Awards, which was run by Volkswagen, who were the promoters of it. And there was a talk that he did in Port Elizabeth, and I went up afterwards and told him what I was doing. He was very kind, he listened, but he made a mistake because he gave me his telephone number. And so I didn't let go until I got him here. And eventually I got him here. He came in the morning. In those days he got a flight here and he spent the day with me. And we drove around what I was doing here. And that was before I'd opened. And that night he left. But from that day onwards, we both Pisces. And we managed to click like it was an elder brother to me. And he was the most incredible human being in my life, in that every time there was an issue I had or anything, he would give me an idea, he would promote it, and then he introduced me to the most amazing people around the world in terms of conservation, like John Aspinall, who did the gorillas, Sir Lawrence van der Post, many, many people, and he brought a lot of them here. So this product of ours got major endorsements that we were doing, and it was the first time that it had been done, probably certainly in Africa, but probably in some parts of the world, a massive rewilding project.
never tried the caramel before.
I'll do the normal, this one.
Okay, awesome.
Yumbo.
The sponsor's happy.
Delicious.
Hopefully it is.
There's no sound.
Very good.
Nelly, do you want to share with me? I don't want to hold one.
Okay, no problem.
Would you like to try peanut butter? Ooh, this looks nice. Coated with caramel choc.
I have to finish it.
Thanks so much for being here. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about CCFA. Obviously, you are enjoying the beautiful Founders Lodge. CCFA is the charity of the Mantis Collection. So we are the foundation of the Mantis Collection. It stands for Community Conservation Fund Africa. And we were set up to work with community members to make a difference within conservation. It's a beautiful charity that really aims to empower people, uplift people, educate people so that they can in turn do something for conservation, and it has a positive effect on conservation. And I think one of the special things about CCFA is that we were set up to use the hospitality industry. Adrian's favorite line is, take the wildlife out of Africa and there is no tourism. And so his idea was, let's set up a foundation that uses the hospitality industry to raise its funding from the hospitality industry instead of going after the corporates, the high net worth individuals. Let's use something that we have at our own fingertips. And so what we try to do as CCFA is allow our guests to be impacted by what we are doing, but for themselves to make an impact as well. So one of the projects that we host on quite a few of our properties is beekeeping. Basically what that is on the properties we will have beehives. Guests are able to adopt a hive themselves, which will then be their hive. We'll engrave their name onto the hive. They can visit it when they next come back to the property. And the idea being that when they go home to wherever they came from, they have left a hive that is gathering bees, collecting bees, and increasing our bee population. When they adopt the hive, a percentage of that hive money goes towards community members' hives. And then what we'll do is gather the honey, collect the honey from their from those hives, and when you sit down in the restaurant, you're eating the honey that's from the community apiary. So it really is a full circle type of project. So Tans and I really wanted you to help us bait the first 3 hives that are going on to Founders Lodge. Tanya will explain more what baiting is.
So in your hands is...
Do you have?
Let me give you some. Is something called propolis.
I'll take this one, I think.
Or another word for it is actually bee glue. Mm-hmm. And you honestly, in your hands, you're holding saliva of the bee and beeswax.
Nice. Interesting. Okay.
And everything else that they have collected in the bush, so sap, pollen, and when they're making the honey, this is also made. But a very nice thing about this is the fact that they make it and then they use it to crack, the cracks in the beehives. They actually cover the holes, so they use it to protect their hives even more.
Oh, okay.
If you take a smell, you can smell the sweet of honey. You can smell the wax, you can smell even the honey, and that's why we actually use this byproduct of the bees to bait brand new boxes. All that we do is a brand new box, and you take it and you literally smear it all over the place so that we can actually scent the box, and you bait the bees so that they are attracted to this brand new hive, and they then come and make a home of this hive with the help of propolis. Yeah.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
You just bait the wood on top.
You just bait anywhere you want, so you smear it. The scent that we are now, it should actually be a little bit softer, but that will work because it's just wax that we're now putting into the boxes. We put it at the entrance of the hive. Would you like to have a go?
Bait this little corner.
Okay, so one of the other things, like I explained to you earlier, we really want our guests to be impacted when they come to our properties. So we also do have a program where guests can actually log onto the CCFA website. They can put in where they're flying from and which property they're coming to, and it tells them how much carbon they need to offset for their trip coming here. And then what we say is either they can donate the money towards CCFA and we can plant a tree for them, or if they're coming to certain properties where we are able to plant trees, when they arrive they can plant their own trees to offset their carbon for their journey. So this is a little bit about what we're doing here as well. Trees, greening is very much at the heart of CCFA. I hope you enjoy planting your trees. These trees have been propagated from the nursery. We work with a community from the Kwanabushle township. They are called Indalo. They are cooperative. This is speckboom. It's called elephant bush, hey Tons?
Yeah.
And it's got massive oxygen properties.
And edible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can actually eat it. Lots of medicinal value to it too.
What's the oxygen fact?
No, Di, you ask me that every time, and you know I am not a academic when it comes to knowing my numbers. But a lot of oxygen.
A lot of oxygen.
It's in terms of size of the plant versus the amount of oxygen that it produces. It's in its top 5 of oxygen. Talking to it.
Grow, little tree, grow.
Easy.
Little guy.
Press it hard. So Sharon, behind us here is the rejuvenation of a vegetable garden. So you'll see that there's not much in it, but I'm very, very excited about what's happening here at Mantis Founders Lodge. This is a vegetable garden on our property, but solely run or assisted by a community member that lives in Patterson, which is about 45 minutes away from here, and majority of our staff that come from the two communities that flank the reserve. So Tobela is a young woman that is actually hospitality trained, but has gone back to Patterson in her home and started a community garden. What is quite exciting and something that we as CCFA are very excited to be part of is that Tobela will be and is supplying vegetables from her gardens in Patterson for us to serve and on our tables to our guests. And she also provides a lot of food security to the creches at the school at Patterson, to some of the community halls that she assists. And so we are using her gifting, her green fingers, and we have been supplied with seedlings from her gardens. And what we would like to see replicated in all our hotels is that we do not procure or buy from big companies, but we support local, and not only supporting local, but we support the staff and their families to help us run our lodge.
Munu on Instagram. Absolutely.
You follow him on Instagram and on Facebook.
I know, they like with your breakfast. That's terrible.
Can they not fix it?
I don't think so. But you can see
Love those sounds.
all the shape, everything, compared to the white rhino, the one that you said.
Yes.
Then you see the shape of the mouth.
Yeah.
You look at the neck, like, yeah, it's very different. You see, if you look at the breast, it's more like straight.
yeah.
Compared to the white rhino, where if you look at the white rhino, it's more like hump.
Yeah.
Yes,
And as you say, the white rhino's face is a lot bigger. The head's a lot
they
bigger.
got like square legs.
Yeah.
And I'm Skumbuzo. I work for Founders Lodge by Mantis. So we are here to Munu. So I will tell you the story how Munu ended up here in Founders Lodge. So Munu was found in Ado National Park. He was walking in circle, and then the veterinary team decided to dart him so that they can find out what was the problem. And then what happened? They found out that Munu was blind. And then from there, they decided that they have to take Munu and put him to the boma at the Ado National Park. And then Founders Lodge, Mr. Adrian Gardner and Brett Barlow, they adopted Munu from Ado. And then they built this boma, as you see here, as the mirror image of the one that was there in Ado. And then he came here at Founders Lodge around June, July 2019.
Good morning, my name is Justin Barlow and I'm involved with one of the caregivers for Munu, where we take care of Munu twice a day, and our job pretty much includes cutting browse, bringing lucerne, filling up his water. He gets fresh water daily, and just looking after his general well-being. So Munu is a very, very special black rhino. He's a desert black rhino, and a few years ago there were only up to about 254 of them left, which the increase to look after Munu and support him and conserve him and preserve him as a species became immensely important, because as I say, these creatures are declining at a rapid rate. So in terms of our daily business with Munu, is, I wouldn't call it a job. It is absolutely fantastic. Being a field guide for the last 10 years and seeing rhino here and there, and especially black rhino, very skittish, very shy, has to stay in between the thicket. To be able to spend your day with Munu twice a day, come and visit him, it's not a job, it's a privilege. And for anyone to be lucky enough to do something like this, you get to know each animal's little personality. And I can tell you, Munu, he is full of personality. He is vocal, he talks, he recognizes smell, he recognizes voices. Although he cannot see, remember, he's completely blind. So it becomes quite important with his boma to have the same routine every day. Remember, he knows if I go 5 meters to the right, that's my entrance door to exit the paddock. He knows where his water is. Every single thing for him is done routinely every single day. And that includes 6 to about 10 different types of varieties of browse. He gets lucerne as well to supplement him, gives him a bit of high energy. But we're feeding him mainly indigenous vegetation that he would naturally be eating out here. And this includes false olives and wild olives, xerceas, and scotia, the boerbean, which is also one of their favorite trees. He has a sweet tooth for something called noors, which is part of the euphorbia family, which if he's eaten too much, he'll go to visit one of his big trees, and there he'll spend his day and just have a nice little nap for the remainder of the day. But all in all, going into Munu's care, it's not a tough job. It's something we want to do.
So guys, we are standing in the Founders Museum at the Founders Lodge, and I've got Craig here with me that's going to tell us a little bit about the history of this amazing place and the stuff in the museum. Craig, thanks for chatting to me.
Thank you, Sharon, and thank you so much for the opportunity of getting to showcase what is a really special part of Mantis Founders Lodge, both for Adrian Gardner, the group, and ourselves as property managers. Essentially, this has been put together over the pride and passion by Adrian and his family and the company over many, many years. And as you can see, it takes you around a brief journey of what the property was in the initial days. If I could just walk you over here, of what the property was, an old farmhouse built in 1945, to when it began the renovations in 1998 through to the finishing a year thereafter. So from an old farmhouse that was originally bought by Adrian, from whence he ran his operations of rewilding the Eastern Cape. And this is where it all began, essentially. And Adrian is essentially singly responsible for the reintroduction of the smaller species as well, not just the elephant and the lion and the hippo. And two examples of that would be the dung beetle, with the early arrival of the settlers and dipping of cattle and other species. They eradicated the ticks on which the red-billed oxpecker also thrived and lived on. So he successfully reintroduced both species back into the Eastern Cape, which is a magnificent conservation story on its own. Along his travels and with his incredible passion of local culture, Adrian has put together what is recognized as probably the world's greatest selection and collection of local isiXhosa beading. So every drawer represents a bead that is used in certain ceremonies, in certain types of dress. The attire would be suited to the occasion. And what I find intrinsic and really, really special here is that this is still ongoing to this day, but we've got to be very careful that this art is not lost, because this is a conservation story in its own right.
Yes.
Wherein culture and the type of beading almost has a language of its own.
Yes.
So if you were courting a young man from that village, you would bead him a bracelet or a necklace in a successive sequence of beads of different color. And that would send the message to him to meet him at the river or whatever it might be for your liaison. And he would reply with a different color beading process of his own in his response. So there's many types of areas of interest within the beading process as well.
Are you mixing up the...
No, very.
Also, may I just try a little bit of the fat on the side like that? Just a 2-second hold, you see. Just to pull through the fat juices, through the succulent meat, and give us a nice whack bite to the one top. Cheers. There you go.
Oh. Perfect, okay, we're getting back into position.
So,
And this braai looks amazing.
there you go.
So guys, we are at the awesome Founders Lodge in the Eastern Cape, just outside Makanda, and I've got Craig Hinds here with me. Craig, thank you so much for joining me, first of all, and thanks for chatting to me.
Thank you. Just, it's incredible to be here.
It is. It's a lovely place, eh? Definitely one of the best kept secrets.
Wow, tell me about it. It's just from when we arrived to everything we've done so far, it's just sort of mind-blowing, really.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And as you know, we're on a mission to resurrect tourism in the Eastern Cape. So thank you for joining us here, and thank you for just absorbing all the beauty that we have to offer. Now, talking about touring and being on the road, you have been a musician for quite a number of years. How long have you been in the industry?
So I started sort of as a solo artist, really playing covers in pubs and restaurants 23, 24 years ago.
Okay.
I came out of a teaching profession and qualified as a school teacher, became a school teacher, and then thought, I want to do the music thing.
Yeah.
And so it was around the late 90s. Started bashing around on guitar and piano and just having fun, and realized then that I could write songs and And then the Watershed career sort of kicked off 2000.
Now, as you say, the band Watershed, you guys have had quite a number of really standout hits and successes. Can you just tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we our biggest hit by quite some way is a song called Indigo Girl, which we released on the first album. That became a really big hit in about 2002, 2001, 2002. The hard part was about maintaining that thing. And, you know, we wanted Watershed to be recognised, not Indigo Girl.
Absolutely.
You know, Indigo Girl's a part of Watershed.
Yes.
And eventually it sort of, you know, took us a couple of years until we had another song called Letters, which came along in 2005, and that was a really big song, and that then sort of locked everything in as Watershed. And I think at that point we felt that the band had sort of established itself and started to move.
Now, you mentioned touring and that you guys have played basically just about everywhere. How do you balance the touring, the band, and the family life?
I think it's sort of what you sign up for. If you're in a band, it's one thing to be a social band and you get together twice a month and on a Sunday, and then you organise a show somewhere. You know, that's cool, because then your life isn't that. But if you've signed up to be in a touring band and in an original band, I think your brain sort of locks in and you say, well, this is actually what it is, and whatever comes along, you need to. If you're looking at it being your career, you know, you want to do whatever you need to make your career as sort of successful as possible.
Absolutely. Now, lockdown. Obviously, that was not an easy thing, specifically for musicians and the entertainment industry, the tourism industry, the hospitality industry as a whole. How did Craig cope with that?
You know, I think the initial shock was to see a diary, which was because we were sort of celebrating 20 years of Watershed in 2020.
Yes.
And we had a really, really full year of new album, hectic touring. You know, things were just ready to move. And literally after that one first meeting, we saw the diary just like in 3 days from 70, 80 shows already booked that just all fell away. And then it was a completely sort of blank canvas again. And I sort of sat down and thought, well, this is the time. The time's now been forced on you to write songs. Get the pen and paper out, get the guitar out, and start writing. We were separated. The guys in the band are from Johannesburg and I'm Cape Town, and so we didn't see each other. We obviously couldn't. So I just started the writing process and just voice notes on the phone, and I'd send them up to the guys and they'd all listen and they'd add their bit in. And then as soon as everything opened up, I was on the first flight, and then we started workshopping the songs. And so the lockdown songs were written in the space of 4 or 5 months.
Wow. Now, the new album, Elephant in the Room. Can you just tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we sort of, you know, we touched on various elephants in the room. You know, a lot of I think for us, a lot of what lockdown did was it exposed a lot of things. You know, we became acutely aware of women and child abuse during these lockdown times. We became acutely aware of the planet and how the planet basically took a breath during that time, where vehicles were off the roads and planes were out of the skies, and the world took a breath. And so we sort of touched on a lot of those. You know, the politicians were all exposed because of their decisions that they were making, and we were fed with social media information non-stop, and it was, you know, so we all had our own opinions. So people became very aware of everything that was going on, like very sensitive and very aware. It's almost like you can feel the what's going on in the world. So that was really where a lot of the, you know, the ideas came from, and suicide. You know, people just battling with it and not talking about their emotions and not talking about things. And so these are the various elephants in the room that we sort of spoke about.
Well, guys, what an amazing whirlwind tour we had to the Eastern Cape in this season of Go Well with Sharon. What an amazing time we had. What amazing, beautiful things we've seen. Beautiful spaces, wild places. We've been all around the Eastern Cape. And what a better way to finish off the season than by attending a concert by the amazing Craig Hinds from Watershed at the Music Kitchen. So we're going to play out with one of Craig's songs, and we will catch you next time in season 6.
Country, packing up the bills and breaking down the bedroom walls. TV, candle hanging from the walls. Please take a picture of me, hold it up to the light so that you can see to me. Don't let me in, playing black and white. Hey, how about a picnic in the sun? How about the movies and her eyes? How about if I just stay inside and watch the rain? Come on and dress yourself in silver. It's time to make a good impression on the little children hiding behind our walls, wanting to get out. So the world is getting smaller.